Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of the long promised and long awaited Flannery O'Connor Book Club. It's taken me a little while to get this off the ground, but happy that everybody who did buy the book now has a reason to have bought the book. And we're going to be talking about probably Flannery O'Connor's most famous book that she's ever, most famous short story. A Good Man is Hard to Find. That's usually the one that everybody reads in their American literature class. Now, Flannery O'Connor lived in Georgia for the majority of her life, 1925 to 1964. She had lupus, which I guess in those days meant a greatly shortened lifespan. And she was also, with the last name O'Connor, of Irish descent, born to two Irish parents and raised Catholic. And college educated, was at the writing program at the University of Iowa, a degree in English, and maintained correspondence with many people in the American literary scene at the time that she was active, and was kind of a bit of a rising star when the illness cut her life short there. So, yeah, Flannery O'Connor. Oh, she's also one last thing, and this is how you know she fits in on this channel, is that she is a big fan of Thomas Aquinas, just like I am. So she belongs on this YouTube channel here. So, before we dive into the details, does anybody want to share their initial thoughts on A Good Man is Hard to Find?
Why? Why
Okay,
can't
before
the young
we
men
get
do
into
that?
it, had anybody read any Flannery O'Connor before?
No, not a
Okay,
word.
so you guys didn't know what you were in for then.
I didn't
No.
know what the genre was. I wasn't sure what the genre was until the second to last page. I was like, wait a second, what is this going to be exactly? And I was kind of expecting something. I was like, no, she's not going to go here. And then she did. And then I regretted reading it for about an hour. I told Mark on Friday, but at the same time, I was like, you know what? Actually, this will be a decent topic for discussion at least.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, most people have that reaction because you see a picture of Flannery O'Connor. She's just a nice looking young lady, neatly and modestly dressed and all of that. She looks real sweet. And then you read her fiction, and it's like there's people dying everywhere. You've got the most grotesque and macabre characters you've ever encountered in your life. And you wonder how the two come together. So hopefully, while we're exploring this, we can begin to see that what she's really up to here, and what kind of fun we can get into.
And see, how could this make this, right? That's my question.
Yeah. Well, it's a very interesting thing. So, a brief plot summary is that all of this starts off on a family road trip. Spoilers ahead, by the way. This family, it's a father, a mother, three children, 8, 10, and an infant, and a grandmother and a cat, all going on a road trip in Georgia to Florida. And the first thing that we hear about is that there's an escaped convict in the news, right? And so they're meandering their way down through through Georgia. They stop for lunch, have a little interaction there. And then Grandma really decides that she wants to go see this place that she remembered from her childhood, this old manor and a beautiful old house. And she tells a little fib to get the kids in on it, that there's a secret panel with a bunch of silver hidden behind it that General Sherman couldn't get when he came through. So the two kids, they freak out. They really want to go down to this secret house. And she said, the turnoff's only a mile back there. It'll take us 20 minutes to get there. While they're on the way, Dad's very unhappy about this, by the way. While they're on the way down this very poorly maintained dirt road, Granny remembers that the house might actually be in Tennessee and not in Georgia, and that she has no idea where she's taking them. And that causes her to kind of startle a little bit, and that lets the cat loose on the dad's shoulder. and he freaks out and he accidentally pitches the car down a embankment. Fortunately, not long after that, a few men show up and they look like they're ready to help. But Granny recognizes that one of the men is the escaped convict and calls him out on it in front of everybody. And that kind of leads to the rest of the plot. So, first thing that does is one of the henchmen goes and takes Dad and Junior off into the woods, and we hear two gunshots. Um, and there's this really interesting dialogue between Granny and the Misfit, which I'm sure we'll talk about quite a bit later. And then the mother and the two daughters are taken off. Three more gunshots, and then as part of this really intense encounter between Granny and the Misfit, he ends up shooting her 3 times in the chest, and that's the end of the story. So, if you've never heard that one before, yeah, if you weren't prepared for this, I'm sure the ending was a little bit of a shock. All right, so that's our plot summary. If you guys notice anything that you want to call out, I can bring the text up here and we can start to comment on it.
Well, I mean,
I'd like to start out by saying that you say how the ending is a big shock, but it kind of isn't a big shock because it's all set up right from the beginning, and it's just you're watching it all come together in the worst possible way, and you see it coming, and it's just horrible. It's horrible.
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, the interesting thing about the story is there's so many layers and there's so many things going on in all of those layers. The social commentary and the like there because there's a thread about her as an old lady being nostalgic for her friends, right? There's a thread about her as an old lady, uh, you know, failing to be the matriarch and then getting called out, right? There's a thread of her uh, of failing to be able to manipulate, right? Because it doesn't work at first, right? She has to kind of rope the kids in with some kind of lie. We're not sure what kind of lie, right? It might be that Sherman found the silver, and that's the lie, right? It's not that there was no silver, right? We don't know,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
And then there's all this larger, broader social commentary around race and poverty, and those are separate, which is fascinating, right? And there's all this discussion around politeness, which would have been as it is now, although back then it would have been even an even bigger issue, especially down south, because the being down south, they rely on politeness to make sure things don't get worse. And that's just a technical problem with heat, right? When people are too hot, Father Eric can talk all about this now that he knows something real about it. Uh, Tempers flare literally all the time, right? They actually flare. And so politeness is a framework for keeping those tensions low so that there's no reason for people to get angry and we'll say overly act out. And then that theme, although it's not linked to the heat or anything, uh, is there, later on too. Um, and the whole linking of, some random event in a newspaper, right? That's going on somewhere, right, in the area, but from Georgia to Florida is where the criminal is going. Um, is interesting just because she's hitting all kinds of layers in one, very short, concise story. So I like the short, concise part. I did not like the generic identification part, though. That was like your characters don't have names except the children. What's going on here? You know. So just her
Get the dad.
children have names, and then all the strangers they encounter have names. The rest of her family does not have names,
Mm.
or the rest of the family. It's not her family. That's the problem.
You'll see this comes up over and over again that she insists on her identity as a lady,
Right.
and in the conversation with the misfit there near the end, that's what's going back and forth as she looks at him and she's like, "You're not common, you're not like the rest of them. You come from good. I can tell that." And you don't get the sense that she's just trying to butter him up when I'm not sure she's got that kind of spirit in her. She's sitting there looking and she's seeing something in him which is drawing that reaction out of her. And I think it's an honest reaction. It's not some kind of play to try and save the family there. Um,
Yeah, well, I mean, she doesn't have this is part of the theme. She doesn't have the wherewithal to know when to shut up. She's too honest and she's not diplomatic. That's what we would call it nowadays, diplomatic enough. But you're right. I mean, another theme in here is class as such. And the fact, and this would have been very true in the South back then, it's still to some extent true now. They can tell, like, oh, you belong, in this segment of society versus that one. It's very
mm,
bifurcated here too, right? Everything in the South. Man, even back then, you're either poor or you're rich. That's it. There ain't no in between. So, I mean, that's somewhat changing now, but like, yes, it's still really true.
Yeah, I think something that was interesting for me just kind of going through this is that because this is a much older story, I mean, having been, you know, I'm never going to say for better or worse, for worse, exposed to a significant amount of the horror genre growing up, you, one of the common tropes, which was probably not common at the time of this writing, is the very unlikable characters that all wind up getting killed off later, and so you do have this thing of like some of these people are, including like the ones that aren't even named, are just kind of there, like just sort of as fodder at that point. But also, it's interesting because I at least got the impression that the old lady was not. It was also kind of similar to her relationship with them, or like how much she kind of cared for their attention, because she's always kind of like trying to get the attention of either Bailey, her son, or of the kids to try to use them to manipulate her son and those sorts of things. But she never really appeals to the wife or anything like that. She's just kind of, so it's almost like up until the last page, it's almost like she's kind of the narrator in a sense.
Yeah, there is that. You're right, Kaz. That's a good call out, right? There is that aspect of her that she just wants attention. And the one person that really doesn't give her any attention is acting as a narrator towards her. And just it's like you would go anywhere that we would go. You can't bear to be alone, because you just want our attention. And so it's made explicit in a really clever way in the story, right? I would call this pretty sophisticated writing, right? I mean, this really requires deep comprehension and not mere literacy to understand here. And I doubt most of the people reading this story are really going to understand all the stuff. There's a lot going on for a short story, man. I mean, I'm looking at this going like, who else has this much going on in short stories? And the list is real short. So it's shorter than you might think. Yeah, it's hard to sort of, because most short stories are around like a central theme, and it's just that, right? Like you take a really good short story like Sunrise on the Veld or Lenigan and the Ants, and right, there's just one theme. This just touches on like all kinds of themes. Like I said, class, race, this preternatural ability to know, well, and also the importance of those things. Like the whole thing that causes the accident is her mortification at being wrong about where the house is. Oh, the house isn't down this road, it's in another state. And there's also that interesting sort of subtext of she wants to go north to Tennessee to visit her friends, and they're going south to Florida. right? And but she's a Southern lady, and just like it's so I'm like, man, there's just that. Like that's just the beginning. It's like there's so much going on right there that I wonder when people read this what they're picking up on and what they're not picking up on. Because man, you could miss a lot in this, especially if you didn't know, so for Gustav's, it's probably tough. Like you really got to know something about the South. And for me, like, 15 years ago, this would have made a different kind of sense. But man, having moved to the South, oh yeah, I get it a lot differently now. I can just tell you right now, there's a big difference. Because until you, even if I don't, I knew all the time what the South was like, but until you're here, you don't know what it's like, right? And so now it's like, oh yeah, I totally get this, and the classism and the dependence on a certain type of um, affectation to signal who and what you are and what your identity is, and the reliance on that class identity, which you don't have in New England at all. They try to erase it, actually, which is kind of strange.
Right. So I'll say it this way, right? And this is my reflection as an adult. I lived in South Carolina for 5 years when I was a kid, and I did kindergarten through third grade at the same school. My kindergarten teacher, first grade teacher, and second grade teacher were all ladies, and my third grade teacher was not. And I know that now. I didn't know it then. I had a sense of it then, but I couldn't have said it.
Mm.
Certainly not at school. That would have been impolite. But looking back on it now, yeah, that's exactly how it was.
And you can tell.
You can
Yeah.
tell.
You can tell. And that's what's so interesting, right? Because there's something that, you'll never sort of hear anybody like on YouTube and stuff talk about because it's too non-propositional in essence for them, right? It's too, I think everybody misses stuff like that now. And they're so stuck on equality doctrine and wanting everybody to be equal that they don't want that to be true, especially not in this, this is actually what she's talking about, right? For part of it, like, how come you're a killer? How come you're a bad guy, right? And he doesn't. It's interesting too because he doesn't know what he did wrong. He's quite sure they're correct because, and it's the other thing. Like everything's here. It's so deep, right? The paperwork proves that he's guilty of whatever he's guilty of. But he doesn't know what he did wrong. And he knows that some of the accusations against him, like killing his father, are incorrect, which I find fascinating.
But this little section right here when they're at the lunch place at Red Sam's. June Star, who's taking after her grandmother a little bit, when not knowing when to shut up. I wouldn't live in a broken down place like this for $1 million. And then this woman that she just insulted, she says, "Ain't she cute?" stretching her mouth politely. And then grandmother has to. So that's some of that class thing there that we were just talking about, and the politeness that keeps things running. I think June is about 8 years old. Probably could know better, but can still get away with things.
What do you get from the names of the kids?
So we've got Bailey, the son. We've got June and John Wesley. June Star and John Wesley. I mean, John Wesley is oh boy, that's an interesting connection. He's he was one of the Wesley brothers that founded the Methodist the Methodists, and what was so they were like a branch of Anglicanism that got really popular among the poor and working class. They would do missions for coal miners, factory workers, day laborers, and all of that. Because especially like in the early 18th century, England wasn't that terribly of a religious of a place, and so they came up with this method of proclaiming the gospel to people that really kind of shook them out, and it seemed to be working. But he doesn't really do all that much in this story. But it is interesting that, and I think Wesley was a educated, well-heeled Englishman who, he saw the misery that people were in, and he tried to do something about it, and he, had a certain amount of success of, getting guys to church and not drinking so much and that sort of thing. So we don't. Um, June Star, I got nothing though. Maybe somebody else can fill it on that.
No, yeah, it is interesting that she's doing a thing on the Methodists, right? Because there were all these revivals,
Mm.
you know, after the first wave of Protestant rebellion failed. They tried new rebellions. We haven't tried all these heresies yet. Let's see if we can hit them all. And yeah, I mean, there's obvious, religious commentary going on there that I don't understand. Although he doesn't as a character, he doesn't do much, right?
Yeah, John Wesley, he doesn't really do all that much in the story. You get a lot more of June here. All right, there's a particular line that I want to focus in on. If I can operate my web browser without, I will do it that way. What do you think of that line right there, right near the end? She would have been a good woman, the misfit said, if it had been somebody there to shoot her every minute of her life.
I had some thoughts about that. Well, first of all, when I read it, I couldn't quite comprehend it. I'm like, wait, she needed to be shot all the time to be good? But then I realized, no, no, no. There needed to be somebody there threatening to shoot her every minute of her life. Like she needed to be close to death to be good or something. And just to put it succinctly, I think what that line shows is that he's he's painting himself as a good guy because he's making her better. He's making the world better by giving her a gun at her face.
Hmm.
I
What
think
do you think?
she's completely lacking like basically any virtue, right? Like she wants everything her way all the time to the point where like she completely hijacks the family trip. She's smuggling a cat, which like her own son like would never want to have with them. She hides that fact the whole time. She's lying to people, she's manipulating, she's doing all of this stuff the entire time. The fact that she can't keep her mouth shut gets the entire family killed, and she actually doesn't seem all that upset aside from her son and herself. And there is a certain thing of like if she had experienced or had the discipline to do any sort of mortification, even to the extent of like just keeping her mouth shut for 5 seconds, like that is a certain sense, kind of like the thing with St. Paul where he talks about how he dies every day, sort of thing, where it's just like, yeah, if there was someone to shut her down or to give her some sort of mortification, then she probably wouldn't have been such a glutton for every possible type of manipulation. I think that wound up literally leading them downhill, and then to the end of the story, I think.
I think it also shows his attitude towards her, right? Because he seems to read her very quickly, but he is genuinely touched by the entreaties that she's making, right? Like she's actually getting to him, and in whatever level that he's capable of understanding this, he's getting the best that she has to offer, right?
Mm.
Because these like, no, really, you're better than this. I can tell you're better than this. Like you just need to call upon Jesus, and he'll help he'll help fix everything, right? And I think that also helps explain kind of the death scene here. Um, why you're one of my babies, you're one of my own children. And she reached out and touched him on the shoulder. The misfit sprang back as if a snake had bitten him and shot her 3 times through the chest. Then he put his gun down on the ground and took off his glasses and began to clean them. It's this image of her reaching out and touching him on the shoulder, and then he springs back, right? Right, like this wasn't a threat. This wasn't any kind of a violent altercation. He's springing back because, like, the love and tenderness that she's showing him right now is a threat to him.
Hmm. Yeah, that line that you highlighted earlier too, Father, is great because, and I like that Gustav went over it in detail, right? The way that character would have said what Gustav said, which was she needed to be under mortal threat every day of her life to be a better, right, to be a good woman, right? Um, is that way. Like that is the only way he would have had of expressing that. And the interesting thing about that, like, he wouldn't have been able to be as eloquent as Gustav's was. But the only way that he would have had of expressing that is that way. But that also indicates that there's a mismatch, hence the name misfit, between his class and his being somehow, or his affectation. Maybe I can't tell from the story, which is another interesting little hint and clue as to, like I said, I mean, it's operating on so many levels. Like some people, and they go into this whole thing about, some people are just born different, and they just like, no matter what, like, upbringing isn't the thing, right? It's a thing, but it's not the thing, right? And so, and you see, hints of that with, when the little girl is impolite. You see hints of that with, with the idea that it's sort of implied, you'd need some cultural relevance. You'd probably need to understand, and I'm not pretending I fully understand, those times, but probably the cafe people were, you know, not well treated at any point and came from a very low, and yet they're polite, right? And here you have this guy born high, and yet he's a murderer, right? And yeah, there's so much going on just in that one little piece. But they have the whole discussion about, him. Also, the sin of curiosity is in there, or acedia, right? That's in there because that's what he has. That's what a misfit has, and so just like, yeah, sin is hidden right in there. It's rather brilliant the way she tucks that religious uh, theme in there.
Yeah. I was a gospel singer for a while. I've been most everything. Been in the armed service, both land and sea, at home and abroad. Been twice married. Been an undertaker. Been with the railroads. Plowed Mother Earth. Been in a tornado. Seen a man burnt alive once. I even seen a woman flogged.
Yeah, but his father, right? He recalls what his father said about him, and his father's like, "Yeah, you're just too damn curious. Like, you're just in. He's just into everything or something, right? You're always going
Yeah,
to
I'm
be
looking
into
for that
everything."
one. I'm looking for that line.
Yeah, and that I found fascinating because I'm like, well, there's his sin, his flaw, is that he's insatiably curious and can't leave well enough alone, which was, I've got to say, about the weirdest thing that could possibly have come up today, just based on discussions I had before I read the story, not knowing what was coming. And I was like, how is this in this story after the discussion I had earlier today? But hey, whatever.
My daddy said I was a different breed of dog from my brothers and sisters. Daddy said, it's some that can live their whole life without asking about it, and it's others has to know why it is. And this boy is one of the latters. He's going to be into everything.
Right. Right. That theme actually came up this morning on the Discord. It's like, why? How is this possible? But whatever. Just moving right along.
All right. So here's a question for you guys. Do you think the misfit is changed between the time he's introduced and the end of the story?
Not enough of a difference to make a difference, in my opinion.
Can
I
confirm.
mean, yes, but for the worst. Because he encounters goodness and love and recoils from it, and his response is to kill it with fire. Well, with bullets, but
So we've got this theological treatise in here. Jesus is going to come up more and more if we keep on reading Flannery O'Connor. And Jesus was the only one who ever raised the dead, and he shouldn't have done it. He's shown everything off balance. If he did what he said, then it's nothing for you to throw everything away and follow him. And if he didn't, then it's nothing for you to do but enjoy the few minutes left you got left the best way you can by killing somebody or burning down this house or doing some other meanness to him. No pleasure but meanness, he said, and his voice had become a snarl. So he's got this idea. It's like, well, you know, it's either like you shoot for the best because Jesus is the best that the world has to offer, or you just do mean things to people because that's the only pleasure in life, and then eventually you'll die, and that's all there is to it.
yeah, burn it all down. And I think, yeah, I mean, I can't think of a more succinct way of sort of exemplifying what has happened today as the result of our condition, and that's 1,000,000,000% clear in certain conversations I'm struggling to listen to myself.
And you have this thing of like the sin of curiosity or the vice of curiosity. Just in a couple of paragraphs down there where he says, if I had have been there, I would have known, and I wouldn't be like I am now. So there's again that thing where
Right.
it's like I had to have been in it. I had to have had the confirmation of being the one. And he even says right before that, he says, it ain't right I wasn't there. It's just like, my goodness. Like you
Right.
really he
Yeah.
needs to
So
have
he's having
all
a
of the
crisis.
information.
He's having a crisis of faith. He's like, look, if I just knew, then I know what's right, and I could do the right thing, and it makes total sense because of the resurrection of the dead. But like, I don't know, so how can you expect me to give up everything in order to do that? And when he's talking like this, um, she saw the man's face twisted close to her own as if he was going to cry, and she murmured, "You're one of my babies. You're one of my own children." That's the point where she reaches out to touch him there.
Right. Right. Well, and it's so that has so much in it. There's individualism, there's meaning crisis, because those two go together. You want to be an individual? Have a meaning crisis for free, not optional. Right. And then there's this whole theme about the demon comes out in him and the angel manifests in her. And there's a fight. Right. So yeah, I mean, it would be interesting if there were more indication if the angel actually won in the end, but I'm not seeing it in the story, although I could have missed something.
There's an interesting thing that I missed on my less careful first read through, which is that he puts on her son's like Bailey's
Shirt.
shirt, right?
Yeah.
When she does the touching, and it's like it's it's difficult to tell exactly what happened there because she was confused, and so she couldn't tell what was going on, and then she can tell, but she's wrong. But it's a mess.
Yeah, no, I mean, I
Oh,
think it's a manifestation. I think the good in her manifests, or the good manifests through her, in the same way the demon manifests through him. And it's yeah.
So
That's how I read it.
the misfit's eyes were red-rimmed and pale and defenseless looking. Right? He's cleaning his glasses, right? Why does he need to clean his glasses, you know? Maybe blood got him on him. That's possible. I ain't gonna say it's not, but he's not cleaning his shirt. He's just cleaning his glasses there. Um, you know, and then he delivers this line, and his stupid lowborn friend says, "Some fun," and the misfit isn't into fun anymore. He tells Bobby Lee to shut up. It's no real pleasure in life. So we don't get the sense that he's having fun killing people anymore. Looks like he's crying to me. That's what it looks like, and no longer has is taking the pleasure in there. So you know, I mean, certainly the evil popping out of him and you know, inducing him to shoot grandma is certainly very evil, but I'm not quite so convinced that evil wins at the end of the day here. I think uh, there might be a little hook of goodness that's gotten into him, but it is rather ambivalent. And
Mhm.
if you don't see it, I'm not gonna say that you're wrong. It's just obviously what she's doing.
Well, and
Well,
it's hard to tell too because as with all authors, uh, that is very fashionable way to write at the time with the wide open endings. Right. We're still, like this is still in the wake of, people like H.P. Lovecraft who lived him an open-ended story. No
He learned
ending at
that from
all.
Edgar Allan Poe.
Edgar Allan Poe. Right. It's a continuation of that genre. And it's an interesting genre blend too, because like they did some of that, from my understanding, in some of the detective novels, which are probably around and then slightly later than this time. So some of like the dime novels and stuff, it got into the open-ended stuff. There's only so much you can do in literature at the end of the day, so it's all been done a million times before. Um, but the way she's doing it is out of all those genres. In this, to Castle's point, like what genre is this freaking story? I have no idea. Right? And how do you classify this? Because it's very everyday regular life. And that's what like that's not just the set and setting, that's what it's dealing with. Because like you look at, say, Jack London and like, what's that? Well, that's frontier adventure, right? Or you look at H.P. Lovecraft or Edgar Allan Poe and go, oh, well, that's gothic horror. Okay, right? You look at this and you go, what is this?
Gothic horror.
It's not horror. It's not gothic. It's interesting. It's the interesting genre. Yeah, I wouldn't classify it as horror even. Like it's not.
People call
It's not
it Southern Gothic. That's what they call it.
Southern Gothic. Yeah, maybe. It's just a fascinating sort of mixture, because it doesn't fit the usual open-ended sort of trope. Like most mysteries get wrapped up, like I said, except the detective stories would do this open-ended thing, so they could do serial novels. So it's hard to tell if she's mimicking a style or is it mere social commentary, right? Or well, social commentaries, because if you only read one into this, then you're missing about 9 others. There's a lot of commentaries in here, man. It's just chocked full of them. If you had told me like, oh, this story is this many pages, this many words, whatever, and there's this many social commentaries in it, I probably would have thought you a liar. I was like, nah, no one can do that. No, she kind of can. It's pretty brilliant, actually. So
It was interesting the way I described this story, spoiler free, to somebody after I read it, was that it's kind of like nowadays when you see like those like the murder mystery shows, and they have like the introduction at the beginning where you see the murder happen, but like then they have to solve the thing throughout the entire thing. But it's like, oh, it's just a really sophisticated intro, and that's all you get. For it's just like you don't actually get the investigation, you don't get the actual wrap up for any of that stuff. It's just like, no, this is all the horrible stuff that happens before the first commercial. But I was thinking about that. I mean, just more of this thing, because like drug addicts have this thing where they don't actually, past a certain point, like they don't actually take pleasure in the behavior or anything like that. And interestingly, he's holding a cat at the time that he's saying this. But there's a line, because it says that he picked up the cat that was rubbing itself against his leg, and then this interaction happens. But you have this thing where just a couple of pages before, the old lady is telling him, like, if you would pray, Jesus would help you. And he immediately says, that's right. And then she's like, okay, so why don't you? And he's like, I don't want help. I'm doing fine just by myself. And it's like, that's exactly right. That's the same. So that I can quit whenever I want to. Like, no, everything is fine. I got this. And it's like, yeah, you don't have to be a serial killer to end up in that sort of thing. And in many ways, like the same level of malice. I think that whole thing of just always making the worst choice really is just kind of like the pattern of malice.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, I like your description, right? So what is this like? It's like the first scene of Law and Order without the rest of it. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's exactly what it is. Only in the South and strange, with lots of social commentary on all kinds of things. Law and Order has very flat, kind of lame, and usually incorrect social commentary. But this has a real depth to it. Well, it's set in New York, so you're gonna get New York City social, not anything that exists outside of New York City. They don't believe there is an outside of New York City in New York City, so fair enough.
Yeah, there is a line. I mean, we're kind of doing this backwards, but there is a line right when the accident happens, and where you can kind of tell, like, there's very much a thing where the daughter, like the young daughter, just really is not having the old lady stuff. And again, it doesn't seem like the grandmother particularly cares, even when the kid gets shot. But there's the line where June Star says, "But nobody is killed." June Star said with disappointment as the grandmother limped out of the car. It's just like the entire thing is just kind of, if anything, like the entire story beforehand was very just uncomfortable the entire time. This is kind of just like, yeah, to Gustav's earlier point, it's like you're just seeing it play out, because honestly, it's just like all of these elements that are just really bad are just all like, it was just begging to happen the entire time. Like it was just, if nothing else, like if they hadn't run into the serial killers, they would have just been stuck in the bottom of that ravine and not been able to get out. Like there was not a good ending waiting for them.
Yeah, interesting too. Everyone dies in in the reverse order that you would expect.
Mm-hmm.
It's very subversive in that way. So it is, in that way, a delightful story, I guess. If you really understand literature, it's a delightful story, from a writing perspective. But in every other way, it's horrific. So
You have really highbrow taste.
Yeah. Well, you have to appreciate the craft of the author, but most people probably can't do that. And fair enough. Like it's not. It takes real study to understand all the little literary moves being made here, and it takes a real understanding of culture and history and the difference between North and South to understand all the social commentary, because it's so quick and it's so concise, and without context you're just not going to understand it. You're going to see it as like, oh, how crass, what a crass way to talk about poor people, or what a crass way to talk about people of a different color, or what a crass way to differentiate people, right? Because it down south it really is rich versus poor. That if you think it's something else, you're actually quite a bit mistaken about that. The wealthy white people don't give two wits about the poor white people. Let me tell you, not. Yeah, they don't. Might as well be gum on the bottom of the shoe.
One of the things that, and I don't know, for YouTube, maybe not necessary to go to the page, but the I did find it kind of delightful that there was some comic relief. You know, the old lady tells a story about a suitor that had been trying to court her and was doing so by giving her gifts, and he would send her like a watermelon with his initials, which was spelled EAT, and she never got the last one because some kid ate it because he saw the initials and thought, oh, you're supposed to eat it. And then for whatever reason, like it's never filled in that the relationship like fell through after that. And she was like, yeah, she was like, yeah, it would have been good for me if I had married him. And it's like, what even is going on here?
Well, because he bought like IBM stock
Yeah.
and died a millionaire.
Yeah.
Coca-Cola stock, but
Or
yeah,
Coca-Cola
basically,
stock, right?
yeah.
Something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
I would have
Yeah.
done
Oh,
well to
Coca-Cola
marry
was
him.
was featured in the cafe too, right?
Hmm.
So there must have been this continual reminder for her. Like whenever you see Coca-Cola, it's like, oh, I could have been part of that.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that was something that worked up until recently, where really recently, like where you could buy stock. Like I knew somebody who bought Ben and Jerry's stock because he lived in Burlington, Vermont, back when they were getting started, and like he gave him like $1,000, which was a lot of money back then, but still, right? And cashed that in later, and it was tens of thousands of dollars. Right, but like that, and that worked back in the day, but it doesn't actually work that way now. It's just kind of too bad. I mean, it can, but it also doesn't. So yeah, it's sort of interesting, all the harkening back and all the interesting contrast, because you don't really know what status they're in now. Just that you get the sense that somehow she's out of place dressing like a lady, because no one else is, right? No one else is dressed up. So it is in that transition where that sort of started to go away, even down south, which also, correlates nicely with the fall of everything else. But whatever.
And there's this
And what
connection
was
from the
this?
past also for
1953.
the rest of the family, because she mentions the family plantation, right? And she has to like explain that to them. It
Right.
wasn't like they weren't connected to that.
Right, the death of the plantation and because that is the representation of the upper class in the South, and not only the upper class, but really like that. Industry is the wrong word, but also the closest word. Like the industry of the South was the plantation, right? And plantation is, roughly speaking, just another word for farm, but they were huge farms, and I can just tell you, just from looking outside right now, like I'm doing, man, does things grow down here. Like you go away for 3 weeks, you come back, and you get weeding for the next week, just for your small garden. Because my good, I was out clipping stuff earlier, and I was like, what even happened here? Like, where did this? We had this flat area that and now it's completely overgrown with vines and plants and trees, and I'm like, what happened? We weren't even gone a month, and we, my goodness, and so that is the wealth, right? That is the value of the South. Is unlike the Midwest, there's a ton of water everywhere, and the soil is so easy to grow stuff in. It's almost criminal. Like it's just abundance, extraordinaire. And so that losing, because a plantation is being a farm, is an organized, curated, structured way of extracting the wealth of the land and spread and then refining it and spreading it out, right? And so you get the sense, to your excellent point, Gustav. Have you been to the South? You must have been here to know all this. That's good. That is a representation of the collapse of the entire southeastern, at least, United States, if not the entire southern United States. So with the exception of Texas, which had lots of oil. That basically has not, I mean, there's no sort of normalized recovery from that, right? The recovery that the US, or that maybe the disease that the US is suffering from, is trying to recover the different regions of the US by making them alike, by cityfying them, if you will, right? By, like, Atlanta is that way, although Atlanta has finally kind of started the collapse. Columbia, even Columbia, South Carolina, like, one of the comments they made was, all right, well, this is the way Silicon Valley does it. And I snapped immediately. I went, yeah, we don't live in Silicon Valley. If I want to live in Silicon Valley, I could. Like, I don't want to live there. Please don't do what they do here. Please. Right? It's just this smoothing out and equalizing and, making everything regular. That seems to be how they've been trying to fix or make up for the Civil War and the destruction of the South ever since. So all of that is sort of encapsulated in here in a way.
And you can kind of see, the contrast between the grandmother and her grandchildren, especially in this thing. Tennessee is just a hillbilly dumping ground, and Georgia's a lousy state too, and the daughter's right there with it. And Granny's having none of it. She's got a certain, we could even say, piety towards her home, and her people and her way of life there, that has not been communicated to the next generation.
Right.
So that's a that's a interesting thing to note here.
It's a loss of grounding, right? The loss of the continuity of history. That's another theme that, man, is just running throughout, especially the weird meaning crisis people. Like, they see it, but they don't. They know it's there, and the solution's obvious, and they're like having none of the solution. Like, well, I don't know. You kind of know it. Like, can't you just, like, we know how to fix it because we know how it worked. But no, we can't have that. We got to have a new solution. We can't go back. Well, why not? We can't go back to what works. Really? Is that your thesis? But yeah, there's a lot of little meaning crisis things in here. It was that I found a little bit surprising.
The Misfits basically meaning crisis, man.
Yeah, I mean, he's an individualist. It's his individualism that gets him into trouble. It's his why, constant why, that gets him into, nature over nurture, right? It's all there. It's all
Well, and
there.
the way he talks about faith, right? Like, he's like, listen, if I was there and I saw Jesus raise Lazarus from the dead, then, like,
Yeah.
I'd be all in there, right? Like, so he's got this extremely empirical way of thinking. Whereas, like, a lot of people are able to manage that just on faith, and it works out for them, and it makes them better. So he's definitely he's meaning crisis man there. Although my thesis is still that he's well, shaken up by the end of it.
Well, he was definitely shaken up. I just don't know that made him better at all. Like, that's the problem. The problem for me is, the demon gets channeled through him, and basically does bad demon thing, and he's reflecting on it, but, like, to what end, right? And like, it's a fully open story, which is actually rather unusual, but because mostly when writers do this, that last line, like, it's no real pleasure in life, would be a reference back to something else. And to the best of my recollection, there's no point at which he says, like, oh, I kind of enjoy what I do. He always seemed indifferent, not like, oh, I do this for fun. So it's not clear. And again, I think this is probably 1,000% deliberate, because she just seems like absolutely brilliant. I think it's his friends who, because that's another common theme where the leader and the friends always have different motivations. Yeah, no pleasure in meanness. Right. But it usually it would be a reference back to, like, that's what makes life worth living, is burning someone's house down if you've rejected, following Christ. That would make more sense in a way. Like, I think this is a literary device, right? She's doing something very deliberate. That's a very open-ended ending. It's
Right,
really
right.
wide open. Like, it's like you're gonna think about everything in this story and the whole world all at once, or else you're gonna have no choice. It's too late. You already read it.
It's also interesting because he kind of puts a stress on the politeness thing. Like, he's shirtless at one point and he like apologizes, and then there's certain points where he's like talking, and then he kind of loses his, like, he's not really sure what to say next, and he's just kind of awkward about it, and you can tell like there's something a little bit there where it's just like he's not, I don't know, like he's putting such a high premium on the politeness, but also like, totally fine with just killing an entire family and everything. And then he kind of excuses himself as well. Like, she goes and says, "Oh, you're a good man," and he says something like, "Gnome, I ain't a good man, but I ain't the worst either." And it's just like, yeah, it's the whole thing where it's just like, well, you're not Hitler, so like that's
Right.
how bad could you be? And yeah, this whole thing of like, there's more of that kind of thing of like, if it's not the hard and fast worst, it's like, well, I'm not that bad.
Well, it is too, that whole, like, destruction of order, right? And he knows he's like destroyer of order, right? And he was born that way. And then because for me, the ultimate commentary is, because this does happen. It's, as Peterson would say, truer than true. What do you do with those people if you want them, if you want to keep them in your society? How do you do that? Because even using the system we have now, they can escape. So, right. So, like, that's the real sort of thing. So this whole idea of rebellion and chaos, destroying order, right up Peterson's alley. Although I don't know how, like, with the literary midget minds we have, doing quote lit crit nowadays, I don't know how they classify this story. It's not a hero's journey, and it's not an anti-hero. So good luck. Maybe your system for classifying literature is about equivalent to a 3-year-old's understanding of anything. So yeah, I don't know what they would do with that. Probably why they don't read really deep short stories. Although I will state up front, I should have done this earlier, I love me short stories, because I can't abide, 105 pages. That's too much for me. My dyslexia is just too much. So
And yet
yeah,
somehow you made it through Moby Dick.
yeah, well, small chapters at a time. Yeah, painfully. No, I still want to know how I read Lord of the Rings in 6 months. Like, I still want to, like, I was there and I did it, and I still want to know what happened, because I'm like, how did that happen? And then I gave a treaty about it that apparently was quite all encompassing somehow. This is my first hint that, I can do that, huh? Okay, well, I guess that's great. It never bothered me before. I was like, oh, that's cool. new skill I guess I have. So it's interesting though that it that individualism clearly is the thing that leads to the I want to say the destruction of order in that way, and that is also clearly the thing that is related to bringing things down and not having them available, we'll say, for future generations, right? Because the generations get wiped out here, like the whole thing. And again, in reverse order, youngest first, right? So it was like, wow, that's interesting. And yeah, in the same way the younger generation has no care for the older generation, the older generation seems to have absolutely no care for the younger generation. As you said earlier, she's not even bothered by losing the grandkids. Like, oh well.
And they start with the males as well. The males are the first ones to get killed. And there was something like, because they're all shaken up from the car crash and everything as well. But there's the part where, she goes and she calls out, "Oh, you're the misfit." And then he says, "Hey, it would have been better if you hadn't recognized me." And then her son, Bailey, curses at her in a way that isn't actually written. And it says that it was to the point where even the children were shocked that he said that. And then the misfit excuses him, although, of course, he's still going to send him to get killed. And there's a point where Bailey says right after that he's like in like a running, like about to do a running start position. And he's like, "Hush, let me handle this." And then he never does. He doesn't make an attempt. Like, yeah, all three of them have guns, but like even when they were isolated with two guys, there was no attempt, at least that we saw, to do anything, which is unfortunate, but also potential head injury with the thing. But everything about that was it was very unfortunate, obviously. Understatement, but
yeah, and like her son's not a good man either, right? To your point, he didn't do anything. He didn't even try to do anything other than swear.
And at the wrong people, right? Like,
right,
yeah,
right, yeah. Yeah, the only good man is the one in the who runs the cafe.
Yeah.
Sammy's the only.
The one who let out a Psy Yodel hybrid and said, "You can't win." That's the
right.
one.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's good too. Yeah, I'd sort of forgotten that the son basically does nothing at all except swear, and that's it. Like, that's his whole contribution to the my solution is I'm gonna swear at the past. Oh, good. That's great help. Thanks.
Maybe we should remind that to everybody who complains about the baby boomers nowadays. It's like, yes, we get it.
Yeah, to me, that this is exactly what's going on. Like, this is a commentary on exactly what's unfolding right now. It's just at a smaller fractal layer of reality, right? This is at the family layer. But if you bump it up, right, to the culture, yeah, pretty much exactly what's happening, every single thing in here, right? Because what people are bumping up against, man, this Vervaeke Peugeot conversation on Transfigured on Sam's channel, Sam Tedman's channel. I can't. It is beyond a catastrophe. It's like somebody is launching nuclear weapons at sanity itself and succeeding in irradiating it to the point where it cannot exist with these people. It's bad. Like, but this whole theme, like all of these themes in this story, are actually in that talk, which I find fascinating. I'm like, I don't know how that happened. Like, that's a really weird coincidence for sure, right? Like, there is this sense where they're just not dealing with the fact that there are certain inevitable parts of the thing that you call reality, which is kind of handy, actually, that you're ignoring over and over and over again. And it's not that you're unaware of them. You're fully aware of them. You're just ignoring them, much like the sun does. You realize there's guys with guns, and the jig is up and bad things are happening and you're not doing anything. You're not doing anything except cursing the past. Fantastic, right? And like just no awareness, right? And then there's this other thread of, like I said, well, what do you do with these bad people, especially because they can escape? Like your solution seems kind of lame. Like, oh, that's, I don't know, right? But like, what do you do with somebody who's born in a good family, but he's a bad seed? He's a bad seed. That's all, right? Like, what do you do with that? Like, so that theme is in there in 3 different ways. This is what I meant by like deep social commentary. That theme is there 3 different times at least, right? Over and over again. Like, what do you do? I mean, Sammy says it, right? Like, I ain't nothing you can do, sort of thing. Like, oh well, this is the way life is, right? And he's got the successful business. So I don't know. And he's nice to people, right? I don't know why I was nice to them, but I gave him free gas. Like, okay.
Well, and her ability to call people good is shown up here. Because you're a good man. Yes, ma'am, I suppose. Said as if he were struck with this answer. So even though we don't get the sense that these are high class people, Granny, she's at least got a good detector for these things, apparently.
Yeah, and that's a social commentary on the fact that goodness and class don't equate, right? Which in the unfortunate age of gnosis that we're in, we equate goodness with intelligence, or at least good articulation. And so, we think Sam Harris is good. It's like Sam Harris doesn't care about punishing the person with dead babies in their basement. He's not a good person. Okay. I'm sorry. There's nothing that you're going to do to fix that. It's just a lack of goodness. Sorry, it's not there. Now you can sort of try to make up for it by saying, yeah, but he's good in this way, right? Of course, you have nothing, by the way, because as near as I can tell, he's never done a good thing in his life. Maybe by accident or something, but that doesn't correlate at all. But nowadays, the new class system, particularly in the US, but not only in the US, is about perceived intelligence, is the best way to, I think, to say it. And so if you're perceived to be articulate and smart, and you use all the very right, most erudite language that you can manage on any given day with just the right pronunciation, then you're probably one of the good guys. And it's like, no, that's not how that works. So it's interesting too, because I don't think there's any like you're a bad person stuff in here at all. It's all like framed from the perspective of the good.
Yeah, I'm just looking at this page as well, which is interesting. So there's a part where like she brings up the misfit here, and then the wife of Sammy says, I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't attack this place right here. You have this thing where it's like, okay, the car at the end of the story, the car's being repaired, and this is the closest gas station, right? So it's like this might actually be, like the setting for the epilogue that we didn't get. But yeah, there's something interesting there as well, that she maybe correctly identifies Sammy as a good man, but she also calls the misfit a good man. After he's already killed people in her own family, by the way, like that's already. But there is something that, I mean, she's already like lied about stuff at this point. I do think that she's genuinely like, trying to connect with this guy, but also. She also, I think it was her, misidentifies the number of times that they tumbled down the down the thing, and then he contradicts it, saying that it was just once. So I mean, like that's the other thing too, is that they are injured from the car crash as well. So it's like all of that stuff playing together, where you've got the personalities of these characters, but then also who knows what kind of injuries they've endured.
Well, it seems like the person who's got the worst injury is the mother, because she had a broken shoulder. You don't hear about that.
I think
you also don't hear about Sammy's wife. Yeah, only a broken shoulder. Yeah, she was sitting against the side of the red gutted ditch holding the screaming baby, but she only had a cut down her face and a broken shoulder. Yeah, and then nobody mentions Sam's wife carrying in 5 plates at once. Like, I guess she just does that. I couldn't carry in 5 plates.
The most competent character in the entire story.
Well, and
Nobody
the
mentioned
foil
the monkey.
effectively.
Nobody mentioned the monkey either.
The monkey. I forgot about the monkey.
Is that like a common thing in Georgia?
No, that would be notable. Somebody who has a monkey.
Yeah, that would be normal.
Well, the word monkey comes up a lot in this set of short stories, actually. I put in a little search thing on Kindle, and the word monkey pops up in many stories.
Really?
Yeah. One of them, I think, is actually a zoo story, so that actually makes sense.
Yeah, that's interesting. The monkey was just sort of, I think that's representative though of the sort of strange things you see down south, which is true today. I mean, you just see strange stuff, and it's differently. Like you can tell you're down south. We went to one of the places we went in South Dakota was Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, and then coincidentally, Kevin Costner's new series coming out, so we get to the hotels on the way out of South Dakota there, and they're talking about all the places we just visited. I'm like, well, that's a little strange. What's going on here? But I was showing Sarah, I'm like, this is what an Indian reservation looks like. Now, she's been down south for a while. I'm like, this is not down south. If I describe it to you in any kind of propositions, you will not be able to tell the difference. But when you're there, boy, can you tell the difference? Like, you're on an Indian reservation. Don't ask me how. I can't explain it, but that the guy with the trailer home with the 50 burnt out cars all in the yard and the tires on everything is on the Indian reservation is different from the guy, same description in Georgia. Like, right away. You would know the difference instantaneously. I could describe it to you all day long. It would sound the same. I could not differentiate it in propositions, but man, is it different. But the only thing that's obvious are the stray dogs. There's way more stray dogs on the reservation. Although there are plenty of stray dogs down here, but man, there's a lot more stray dogs. I've never been anywhere more that I just wanted to rent a truck and grab all the dogs and come home. I got space. No, could not do it. Avoided it. The ones at Wounded Knee were going to jump in the car with me too. I'm like, I know animals love me, but I cannot take you guys home. And one of them was walking with a limp, and it was a mess. It was a real mess. Cannot recommend. Do not go to Indian reservations.
Yeah, why did you
drive
go
cautiously?
Why did you go to a reservation?
I want to go to Wounded Knee. I
Oh,
love
okay.
Thunderheart. If you haven't seen Thunderheart, I love that movie. The movie's pure propaganda and full of vicious lies, but it is a brilliant film on many filmmaking. Like, if you wanted to just independently look at, is this a well shot film? Is it a good story? Does it contain, we'll say, higher element? It's all there. It's a beautiful film. Everything about that film is awesome, except it's a pack of lies. So other than that, it's a great movie. And the dogs, I like Sally's comments. I like how she mentions the dogs occasionally eat a kid. Yeah, well, that happens too on the Indian reservation. But there are unusual things that happen in the sections of this country that were, once well off and have fallen into ruin, we'll say. And the reservations are a bit of a special case, which might be why they look different, even though they describe the same.
It's interesting. I'm still a little bit in Moby Dick mode, and still a little bit in language of creation mode. I'm just kind of I'm thinking about that monkey, honestly, and the cat. So you have this thing where the kids scare off the monkey and it runs off into the tree and everything, and then the dad throws the cat headlong into a tree as well when they land the thing. There's an interesting sort of thing that the two people that the grandma calls good seem to have a way with animals. So like Sammy's got his pet monkey, which he has tamed and is hanging out on the tree and everything. And then the misfit has no problem picking up a cat, which for whatever reason hasn't run away after 7 gunshots. And yeah, like there's no sort of issue there. So I'm just thinking of this thing of you've got also these characters that are kind of like the granddaughter and the grandmother are both kind of like Agent of Time type characters, where like the grandma's got these winding tales and they include lies as well. And there's just she's also she's even concealing the animal, and like the cat is not like at least in the condition, like it flips out on the guy and everything. So like they don't really have any sort of real control over their animals in this family either, or over themselves. And then you've got like the granddaughter. Interestingly, like she goes and she starts doing her tap routine, and she's running after the monkey. She's the only one that doesn't laugh at the funny story that the grandma did. It's like she's always kind of like contradicting. And even after they have the accident, it says something like that she jumped out of the car and is yelling with delight, "We've had an accident." And then there's that thing that she's disappointed that no one died. Not even like, "Oh, grandma survived." But like, "Oh, no one died." It's just like she was looking forward to something happening there. So it's like there's this very kind of like negative, like the negating serpent type of thing going on with these characters. And then like running into this misfit guy who's kind of a bit of both. Like he's a bit of Sammy, but he's also kind of like the worst of them as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting way of doing exposition in a story with the young girl, and the fact that the boy really doesn't participate much. Yeah, there's a lot of deep sort of symbolism, like what's going on in her life around this time, but also very much from observation. I mean, we're not, like you take something really out there like H.P. Lovecraft is just like imagining whole worlds, right? Like Flannery O'Connor's just looking out the window, like adding a couple of lines of commentary to a few fantastical things, and that's about it, right? Because this is the South. There's no question about it. But also there's that aspect, because how you do the things like foil, right? How you do that sort of changes. But there's also this aspect. I believe they flag down the car, right? And so they sort of go looking for the trouble that they find in some sense. So it's not like, yeah, because the car slows down, doesn't it? And then it decides to stop. So it's not like happenstance. Everything is connected to their actions, and that's made clearer by these little expositions by the other characters. Yeah, she's the one that attracts the attention.
It was a big black battered hearse-like automobile.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All the little foreshadowing. I mean, I don't know. I'd have to like go look into it, but I'd be willing to bet that there's a more than fair chance that she's experimenting with foreshadowing, because she does like many different tricks of foreshadowing, and they're all awesome. Like all of them are like, this is a great way to do some foreshadowing.
Something interesting is the misfits' discomfort around children. He mentions that, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't like him. Yeah.
But he just
You
says
mean
they make me
innocence, Father?
uncomfortable, you know.
He doesn't
Hmm?
like innocence? Is that what you're saying?
Innocence, potential, energy, because if you're in a meaning crisis, then that's just a possibility for more bad things to come out.
He's explicitly a determinist, right? And yeah, he's effectively a crazy Calvinist. Right? Like either you buy into the whole story, right, or you buy into the most fantastical part of the story, or it's meanness all the way down. Like fair, I guess. Also, could you not? Like, can we lock all those people up? That would be great.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot, and it's interesting. It's just interesting to note the things that you guys were pointing out and noticing. They were very different than what I pointed out, what I noticed and wanted to bring out. So that's why it's useful to do these book clubs. Is like I was vaguely aware that there was social classes and stuff that came up in this book, but Mark was really focused in on that, and I still think that the primary theme is theological here, and I think as we continue to read Miss O'Connor's writing, we're going to see grace operating in extreme circumstances over and over again, and that's what I would encourage you to look out for. So hopefully, we're going to do this in the future. I don't know if we're going to do it every week. After the pace of the Moby Dick Book Club, I think we can do this a little bit more leisurely. So you can check the Discord server, which has got the link down in the description. But thank you, gentlemen, for participating in this. You got any final thoughts?
I think, thank you, Father. I think
That
that,
wasn't what you were saying at the beginning.
yeah, well, but I think that a lot of people talk about participation and distributed cognition, but we're the ones actually doing it. I'm just saying. I don't know. The Catholics seem it's for the win here, I guess.
Yep. Stay strapped or get clapped.
I guess what I'll leave with is there are actually a lot of nice people in Georgia. But thank you for participating, and I'll see you next time. God bless you all.